Good evening and hello to the world of Canada. My name is James King III. Excuse the background of my notifications. I am a partially but full-time content creator, visual arts designer, and father of one.
We kind of found each other through Instagram and YouTube, as we were talking about. We kind of had a little pre-chat before doing the recording. I had found James through his Star Trek model making on YouTube, and then from there, kind of all the Gundams, mechs, whatnot that you produce, and kind of realizing just how big an audience you've cultivated.
Oh boy, wasn't easy. It wasn't easy.
It never is. It never is. One of the things that impressed me the most was your presentation, kind of easygoing conversational manner, but also showing like a little card or a little pop-up of the products that were being used.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always kind of handy because, a lot of times I'm sure you've experienced it where people are like, hey, in your comments, what'd you use?
Mm-hmm.
What product, where do I get that, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is a big headache on for the audience perspective, because a lot of times some content creators won't leave like any kind of links on where they get the products. I mean, I don't personally do that myself. That's why I like to have it in the video for the audience to look it up as they're watching the video, because it's kind of a hassle looking up and down while watching the video and at the same time trying to comprehend, do I need this particular tool? Do I really want it? Should I buy it because of the height? I make sure that all that issue gets taken care of. It's on the screen. You can pause the video anytime, go check it out. And if you have any other personal questions that you're kind of like hesitant about buying the product, anyone can always hit me up on Instagram. I don't personally at times look at the YouTube comments because of my busy lifestyle. It's literally by choice. I remember a lot of times when I did start making content, I was always looking at the comments left and right, whether it's good, whether it's bad, maybe it's a spam bot. I didn't want that to be part of my everyday routine. So I will occasionally look at comments. I will read them. I will respond to them as fast as I can. But if anyone generally has questions, they can always hit me up on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
No problems there.
Yeah, it's a good feed. There's lots of good stuff there, and this is obviously Star Trek model making, which we'll come back to. But I want to have you on because part of the show is not gatekeeping, and what I mean is, not limited to, it's like sci-fi. It's only ships from this and this and this. And once again, I know very little about Gundam. I never really got an anime like things and whatnot, so I know very little about it. But from the outside looking in, it feels like it absolutely fits within the science fiction model making umbrella.
Oh yeah. I can recall, like in the early '80s, a lot of like Western shows, and especially shows like in Canada. Like a good example, ever heard of a TV show called Captain Power?
Oh my God!
Okay.
Captain Power, yes, with the.
What are you doing? Aim the Power Jet XT7. Fire invisible beams at the television targets and score.
Yes, exactly. The toys. Yeah. My mom bought me. It was the bad guy ship, but there was a promotional deal when you bought the laser, the light gun. You would get a VHS or Betamax tape, and you would play the light gun game on it, and it was beautifully done with classic 2D animation done in Japan. So a lot of Western films, and not Western, a lot of Western TV shows that were done in the late 80s and mid 90s utilized that collaboration between actually having anime intros done in Japan, and then they correspond with the TV shows in the West. G.I. Joe, Thundercats, just to name a few. Everything corresponds beautifully, and Gundam itself didn't really solidify itself until like 1995 or 96. That's when things really kicked off with the cable networks like Toonami and Nickelodeon. They were and Channel 13, which is now UPN. They were trying really hard to try to syndicate themselves by utilizing anime with the Western audience. What's good, what's bad, what's comfortable for kids, what's not too comfortable for kids, what can we edit, what can we manipulate. And as the last 20 or 30 some years, you start to notice some discrepancy in some of the animes that we grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a treat in many ways, where it's like, oh, I don't remember there was blood in this scene. Why is it painted like white milk? You know what? That's fine. You know, censorship is like a big thing here in the States, and that's the one thing they were trying really, really hard to cover up. Some successfully, some bad, you know, but I think that's kind of good because it fits with the legacy of the merge between the two with sci-fi and anime. Because I guarantee you, not many people would be interested in Transformers that didn't have a badass intro.
That's true.
You know, it gets you hyped. Same thing with Thundercats. It's about energy, it's about motion, it's about speed, it's about dynamic and really like cool action poses. It's all about that energy, and that's what really, you know, captivates people to get into that. You know, another good example, Robotech, or which, you know, people known it as, what was it? Not Robotech, Macross. Macross is like a big part of the lineage of sci-fi and anime. Me personally, I don't like Robotech, the anime, but I love the fighter jets. I love the fact that they have like multi-changing features where they can become a bipedal to a full mechanized mech to a jet fighter. I find that absolutely fascinating, you know, me personally, but I don't like the anime. I don't like it. It was developed at a time where I just didn't care. And it's the same thing with Transformers. I didn't like it at the time until I saw Beast Wars, and that was like in 1996. So if it wasn't for that show, I wouldn't be hooked on Transformers now.
Well, I've got just a handful of years on you, so I'm a Gen 1 Transformer watcher.
Hey!
So that was my thing. It's actually funny you mentioned that kind of that whole thing where they get that intro that kind of grabs you. Because while I was driving around for work this week, one of the radio shows they did like a battle of the movie themes. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, most of them were John Williams ones, but Star Wars kept coming out on top of like Superman and Indiana Jones and whatnot. And that's literally what they were discussing, is like Indiana Jones and Superman kind of have a slow build up.
Oh,
and
God.
And Star Wars grabs you right off the bat.
Yeah, John Williams is such a fantastic composer. I listened to his music religiously as a child, and I didn't even know who the composer was. Like, he worked on Star Wars. He did some Star Trek films. He did, I believe he worked on another sci-fi B film called Explorers. And I love that opening theme song. It's whimsical. It's magical. It's just, it swells up, and So I'm a little bit of a music buff myself. I just love that stuff.
I loved Explorers growing up, but I cannot remember the music.
Trust me, when you hear it, it'll hit you.
Oh yeah, it'll all come flowing back.
Like, I literally have it as one of my soundtracks on my phone. I have like the full opening orchestral song of the first part of the film leading up to the very end. I guess you can say it's the end credit theme, you know, leading up to the first half of the film, and then when the kids meet the aliens, and then the ending part where the Thunder Road sinks in the water, and then the orchestral score at the very end where, oh, then ship may be gone, but we're still connected. Yay, fly!
I wish I could remember who. Someone made a 3D printed Thunder Road.
I've seen it.
You did?
It's beautiful. Yep. I want it. I want it.
When I grew up, I had the cassette of the Back to the Future soundtrack. Now, it was the OST, so it had, you know, the Huey Lewis and the News and all the 50s stuff, but it had right smack in the middle of side A the Back to the Future theme, and then the last song on side B was the like the overture.
Ooh,
and I don't know how that tape didn't get worn out.
That was like the peak time when you had a cassette tape. Like, me personally, I would always have my own custom cassette tape from like a previous like not a CD, but a cassette that my father wouldn't use. I just record over it. Yeah, I'm like, he's not gonna use it. He doesn't care. I need my fix when I'm going to middle school and high school. I need it.
Yeah.
And dude, yeah, those are good memories.
Oh, absolutely.
Those are great memories.
Well, I mean, when we were talking before, and I didn't realize how close we were in age because you don't show it.
Oh, I show it now. I got more gray in my beard now working at Amazon, dude. Ooh.
That's fair. But yeah, so there's a lot of things we grew up with are and kind of really attached onto or similar. But if you don't mind, can you give a little bit of background on Gundam? Like, what is it? What's the lore? What's the story?
Here's the thing. Gundam it's essentially a multiverse series. There isn't just one Gundam that defines all of them. You got multiple ones. Gundam Seed, Gundam Wing, 00 Gundam, not OST, or I forget. It's like a military-based Gundam. Then you got one that's super sci-fi. You got one that's called Gundam Build Fighters. That's generally designed for an audience that wants to get into building Gunpla building, like the ages from 10 and up. You have one that is more for like adults our age, strictly military, all about the difference between the Federation and the Palatilian regime called Zeon. You know, there's this two conflicting force between Earthlings and the colonies that live outside the Earth ring. They call them, I guess you can say, just like, they're humans, but they have like a special need of ability called a new type ability. It's like a sixth sense when you pilot these very powerful mobile suit machines. So your reaction times, the way how you move, the way how you pivot with the machine, it's very organic. It's fluent. You know, even though you have these mechanical controls at your disposal, you still have the functionality to move this machine like you're an actual human being. So they classify those specific individuals as new types. And that's what my sponsor, you know, kind of classifies their people when they have people underneath their belt that are very skilled and talented doing, you know, different facets of Gunpla, whether it's something that's a straight up build or something that's fully customized with a custom color scheme, or like myself, where I specialize in full custom kit bashing.
Right.
You know, depending on where you grew up in an era, you will be happily welcomed into Gunpla, because there's Gunplas that are multi-changing. They can turn into 3 different types of vehicles. A fighter that is converted to the legs. The torso can be a core fighter, and then the torso of the head can be a fighter. So there's a little bit of aspects of Transformers into that. There's also combiners, like you would see like Devastator from Transformers. But it hasn't... Here's the thing. It hasn't been implemented quite well in the last season they did 2 years ago. So that was kind of a big miss. But like, again, it was targeted towards a younger audience. So there's a little bit of everything for everyone, but there usually is a series in Gundam where they usually go back to the roots, the one that started it all in, I think it was like the 1960s or the 1950s TV show. And that is like the current Gundam time. They call that Universal Century.
Right.
It's pretty much everything that started with the colonies and the Earth, and how the friction began between the two. And then what started the big war was Zeon, the Federation stuff that's outside the colonies, dropped a chunk of the colony onto Earth on the continent of Africa and just completely destabilized the Earth for like 10 plus years. So that's what kicked off the war between the Federation and Zeon. And obviously you have the conflict between the two classic characters. You got Armor Ray, and then I think the other villain for Zeon is called Shar Aznable, which, by the way, total manipulator. He's a complete hottie. He's an awesome villain. I love him. He's just a very well crafted villain. But he also has his soft and tender side. You know, he has his reasons why he's going up against the Earth Federation, because they did his family wrong. His family was high up in the ranks. His father was assassinated at an early age of his kids. So him and his sister, I think her name was Layla, had to go into hiding for like 10, 15 plus years. And all that time, Shar is just holding on to that grudge, that anger to just like never forget. Got to treat the Earthlings like they treat the colonists. Got to get them back for it.
Right.
And that's what the whole show is. It's a little bit more mature for older audience, but a younger audience can get into it just as much. But you got to get used to the talking dialogue. It's not action. It's not dynamic poses, not suspense. You really got to work on the character development of the show. And I recall that happened to me for a long time watching anime. I was all about action and adventure and comedy. And it wasn't until I watched a film called Ghost in the Shell, where it was like very slow pace, a lot of cryptic thinking, a lot of mythologies, and the difference between being fully cybernetic and then being human. Is there a difference between the two? If you die as a cybernetic individual, where does your soul go? Does it go like to the great beyond? Does it get converted into data? I can go into a whole discussion about it. It's a fascinating movie. And it's done very well for itself, where it's done 3 films, 2 animated series, and I think there's another series coming out really soon, a handful of video games, and they did a live action movie with Angelina Jolie, which wasn't bad.
Yeah, I've actually, so the only thing I've seen is the live action one. It's actually Scarlett Johansson.
Scarlett Johansson. Sorry.
Okay, come on.
Scarlett Johansson.
Get it right. Actually, so 2 things you mentioned. So I feel like then, once again, not being familiar with the what's the word I'm looking for? Source material. I feel like holy shit. Let me try that again.
No worries, take your time.
I feel like Pacific Rim drew a lot from Gundam then.
Yes, Mr. Del Toro is well known to being a big Gunpla fan. In fact, him and Steven Spielberg and J.J. Abrams showed up to my local hobby shop not too long ago.
Oh, nice. Yeah, was that the one they tweeted or
at Burbank Hobbies?
Or what? Yeah.
Yes, they showed up there. They are hardcore modelists. They're grounded people. They're super nice. Mr. Del Toro is well known in the industry that he just loves Gundam in general, or just mechs in general. And when he did Pacific Rim, he wanted to make sure that these machines didn't move like how the Transformers move in the Gundam and the Michael Bay films. They have weight, they have volume. He wants to show how these machines work, so you get nice tight shots of the inner mechanical parts. Do they make certain clinging and clanking sounds? Do they rub against one another? Another thing that he was really crucial was the sound design. If you have like a really good 7.1 surround sound, you can feel the weight every time the Jaeger steps and crunch and punches the kaijus. Like, that was like a love letter to the fans. And for me personally, my wife actually treated that film to me on my birthday. I was really surprised because I was going to write it off. Like, I'm not going to see it. I got to worry about college and then my other side gigs. I'm not worried about it. My wife's like, no, let's go to the movies. I'll treat you to it. And she likes to look at my reactions when I watch the film because she wants to get like the input. And she just saw me just doing this.
Yeah, just right into it.
I was just like, babe, this movie's awesome. Thank you. Oh, it was so good. But the second one, I think it came out a little too fast, and it didn't hit as hard like the first film.
No.
A lot of the problems that they had with the first film, they slap it onto it because they were banking it on John Boyega to really bring in the younger audience and the newer audience and then the new audience back to the film. And that film failed on so many angles. The cockpit of where the Jaegers, or like where the pilots sit inside the Jaegers. I didn't like this whole Wii Fit motion sensor crap. I like the analog. It gives it context. And then the whole holographic system was just heavily overused. And then once again, the mechs move like Transformers, Michael Bay machines. I didn't like that. And then, okay, well, we'll make it up to it. We'll add, you've probably seen the film. There's a little Easter egg of a Gundam statue in the film, but it gets trampled on really quick. So that was like a little Bandai's little way, like, yeah, we're promoting the model kit. Please buy it when it comes out.
So because I was, honestly, when Pacific Rim first came out, I'm like, that looks stupid. So I didn't watch it. But then years later, we end up just kind of one afternoon just watch them back to back. Like, this is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
But I will say obviously I watch for different things than a hardcore fan. I will agree though that it definitely felt like it was made more for kids than adults relative to the first one.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to talk about another cheesy robot film, ever heard of Robot Jocks?
Is that okay? Is that like the '80s one
Yes.
with the stop motion?
Yeah.
I know that both Red Letter Media and Good Bad Bad Bad. I'm sure lots of others have gone over it because I think the movie as a whole is not good.
It's not, but I grew up with it as a kid and I loved it because my mom was like a big like movie buff herself, and she would just go to Blockbuster Video and just pick whatever random and caught her kids led. Okay, the Guyver. That looks like a superhero Sentai. I'll buy that. Little did she know it said rated R. It was like, whatever, the kids will get used to it.
Fine.
Robot Jocks 1 and 2, I'll stick with the 1. And I remember watching as a kid, I'm like, please tell me there's a toy. Please tell me there's a model kid. This is so cool. The dialogue sucked.
So I've actually never seen the movie, so I've only seen like reviews of the movie. And yeah, so it had its problems, but the general consensus is the way it was put together, there was a lot of care put into that.
Yes, dude. The puppeteering was phenomenal. The interior parts inside the cockpit was simplistic in a way where your brain can register that this was futuristic. And just the way how the mechs move, again, weight, substance. They're not moving really fast. They're moving really slow. And from what I understand, when the production side worked on this film, they had tons of miniatures. Tons. They had the full cockpit. They had a small, like 1/100 scale of the mech was called the Maximoto 14. This was like their newer version of their mech in the Federation, and the design of it was beautiful. There's some elements that are kind of Gundam influenced, but it's kind of the aesthetic is more focused on not Robotech, Mech Warrior here in the States. It's more grounded in that. And at that time, there wasn't much anime influence in that design for the Maximoto, but the elements were like literally there, and you could definitely see it on little parts where it's a multi-changer. In the second half of the film, you think it's just like a regular mech. No, it's designed to go to suborbital space. It can fly for a short period of time, or when it's severely damaged, it can turn into like a tank, which I thought was great. There's a great sequence showing it how it's like moving and changes these interchangeable pieces where I'm like, that's really cool. Is there a toy? I want it. I remember going to my local hobby shop, which is rest their soul. They're long gone. It was called a Hobby Shack, and they got turned into Hobby People. I remember going to the guy that was there. I was like, do you have the Maximoto 14? They're like, what? Huh? What is it, son? I've never heard of it. It's a movie called Robot Jocks. You mean Star Wars? No, Robot Jocks. And I literally had to bring like VHS tape like to show it to like this is like oh that's a custom product. I'm pretty sure they'll never mass produce that. And I'm like, oh, but do you got Johnny 5? I want to start saying. He's like, no.
What? How was there never a toy or a model in the 80s of Johnny 5?
I don't know. The first film did well. They did a second one. It didn't make any sense. I mean, it didn't do too well. Okay. Well, these are things I don't know. These are wonderful things I don't know. But I remember looking at that first opening scene, part 2. I wanted a miniature Johnny 5. Everyone wanted.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. Like, how did you not tie that in when you literally opened the movie with that?
Yeah.
You got me thinking of something. In the last episode, when I was talking to my friend Ken, we grew up together, and it sounds like a lot of our experiences growing up are kind of similar. Because I had a small hobby shop, literally called the Hobby Shop.
Aww.
And like, it was a small store, like a big, deep rectangle, but it was like everything, and it was like the only thing in town.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to say is, like, to come back to Ghost in the Shell, because you mentioned like the weight of this isn't related to Ghost in the Shell. This talking with the Max Gunplas whatnot. You said there's the way they move, there's a weight to them. Ghost in the Shell, the live action. So I don't know how loyal it is to the anime source material, but it reminds me of RoboCop in that it is literally the fundamental underlying story is finding your humanity again when you're fundamentally no longer human.
Ooh, you touched on something really fascinating. I would say in RoboCop 1, it was the first time as a child where I felt empathy for a character. It hit me really hard. I remember my mom when she recorded, because it was on HBO back in the day. So if you had those parents that like, hey, we got one cable box, we'll just splice it. You get what I get what. And that's what she would do back in the day. But I remember watching the uncut version of that as a kid. And I was like, he'll get back up, right? And then there's that tight shot where you see Alex like literally a back angle, like
yeah,
that full beautiful puppeteering of it, and just gets that head blown off. I was like,
yeah,
Mom, can you turn this off? She's like, no, no, you got to watch it. You've already halfway in it. It's like, but this is the beginning. She's like, trust me, it gets better. So
it really does. I had to watch it at my friend's house because they had a satellite dish.
Ooh, so good times. Those are big ones.
So I mean, we had regular cable, which was like 13 channels, and like 4 of them were French. So they had a satellite dish, so we watched, and I wasn't, like, you're not allowed to watch violent movies and whatnot, but of course, you did it, and so that movie has stuck with me.
Yeah.
Ever since.
It's beautiful, dude.
But yeah, like I said, but they said the base stories between the two live action are very, very similar, and the same way that they redeveloped how to make the RoboCop move. Like I said, it feels like there's weight, like servos clicking into place, and like the weight of the sound as he's walking, like there's a weight to it.
Yeah. Oh, love that. Love that sound. If you actually touched on something really interesting. Elements of the Ghost in the Shell live action, which corresponds with the anime, is very similar with the scene where Murphy is fighting the Ed 209.
Yeah.
Mokoto is going up against that military tank, very similar to the Ed 209, and the only difference is Murphy barely made out of the skin of his teeth.
Yeah.
And same thing with Mokoto, the exact same thing. If it wasn't for Bato saving her, so you're going to see that a lot in old animes, that they really were heavily influenced with Western films, so much, and you can just see it a lot. I mean, the plagiarism is like really high. But some people kind of like, what? It was a different time.
Yeah,
it was a different time, and we the fans we're kind of okay with that, because art reflects on other artists. No one's art is original nowadays. Something has to influence you, and I'm pretty sure RoboCop had a substantial influence from anime as a whole. They didn't need to make the RoboCop suit that had like multi-phasic color temperatures between grays and blues. No, and mind you, the first film was very subtle about it compared to the second film.
Yeah, but they really ramped up the amount of color shown in the suit.
Yeah, like that nice transition between the blue and a little bit of hue of purple with the silver. Beautiful, but they were real subtle with the first film, and I get it because they didn't want to be too distracting to the audience, and I get that completely. But again, there's small little elements of that, because anime at the time were okay. This is something that me and my friends talked a lot back in the early 90s. Japan was stuck in the 80s when we were already in the 90s. So anything that was like retro, super chromed out vehicles, chrome mechs, that was like the hot thing back in the day. So I'm pretty sure that the director that worked on RoboCop was heavily influenced by that particular aesthetic. But not too chrome, because if you look at some Japanese commercials, RoboCop does make an appearance for like a fried chicken.
Yes.
And he's like super chromed out. And I love that. But again, it's for the general audience eyes. But maybe if it was super chrome looking, would it be too distracting? Would it look weird on the camera? I'm glad they went with the more of a softer metallic finish versus like a hyper chrome, because that it would have looked cheap. I think that's part of the big.
No, it had to look. Yeah. I'm going to steer this back to our actual subject. The actual model making thing, but no, it is meant to be a conversational thing. But so because you've had you've crossed the line, as it were, on what you build and whatnot. So you build a number of starships, which is obviously my preferred area. Truck ships. I just prefer the elegance to them. Ooh. But to have fun, though, I mean, like, to be able to really make something your own, Star Wars is the way to go. But so how would you because you would have had to work with a number of manufacturers between Gunplas and then the ones you've made in Trek. So how does one shape up against the other?
Ooh, that's a fascinating question. I feel like when I work on Star Wars model kits, there's a certain aesthetic that you have to follow. Dirty, grimy, worn out. Give a sense that this vehicle has been through all the wears and tears against the Empire. There's a certain aesthetic that you kind of have to follow. It can't be too weathered. It can't be too clean. So where you compare that to the Enterprise, all hands are on deck. You know, you can do whatever you want. And like you said before, the starships in the era that we grew up they have a certain elegance to them. Yeah. And this is the phrase they love to use in the films and the movies. She's a beauty. She's a beautiful, and there's a lot of context. The refit, I can honestly say, it was kind of like my first crush as a kid. You know, I remember sitting in front of, you know, my good old RCTV, just glued in front of that first shot in the motion picture, and just like, how did they build this? How did they paint it? What kind of lighting systems are they using? How big is this? Can I do it myself? Who do I need to learn this from? And I just sat there just studying that every single time I watched that film. I made little versions of it out of cardboard, balsa wood, even delve into like doing like some light welding. I failed at it, but I was really captivated of just understanding how these ships were designed. And as the years went by, I kind of gravitated away from Star Wars and put all my energy and focus onto starships because I love how they were dramatically evolving in the course of time in every film. You got the Excelsior class, you got the Galaxy class, you got the Nebula class, and then the Constitution class that went through like 2 different iterations leading up to the A, which was like a dumpster fire because it was essentially, you know, off the assembly line and had bugs and problems. I hated that, but I loved it in the movie. So I love the fact that nothing isn't perfect in having a Federation starship. There's gonna be bugs, and so Star Wars and Star Trek kind of like beautifully coincide with one another in their imperfections. You know, I remember when I was young, I remember watching the films. I went from the motion picture to Star Trek 3. I didn't see the Wrath of Khan until like I was in high school. So imagine watching that as a kid, watching the opening sequence of Star Trek 3, and you see that beautiful ship just banged up. You're like, what happened to you? Who kicked you on the ground? Why does the secondary hull have phaser damage?
What the hell did I miss?
I remember asking my mom. She was like, I couldn't record at the time. I'm sorry. It was a little too violent for my taste, Jimmy. I'm sorry.
Which I think is funny. You could watch RoboCop and not Star Trek 2.
Yeah, well, it was a different time. You know, my mom was too focused raising like 3 kids, and my dad was working a full-time gig, so she had to find ways to just keep us entertained, and I get it.
Right.
You know, yeah, but she did have her limit. But the thing is, a lot of the promotional stuff back in the day didn't tell you it was rated R. It was kind of like action-packed.
Right.
Good for the kids. 5 stars from whoever reviewed it. And you end up find out that there's anime adaptations of live-action films where people get their arms severed and split apart and blood gush. I'm referring to the Guyver live-action movie that had Mark Hamill as one of the characters, and then he dies unceremoniously. You know, it was just a different time. But back onto the difference between Star Wars and Star Trek leading to Gunpla. Gundam didn't really hit me until I was in college. And I know it was like the hottest thing. Everyone loved Wing Gundam or Gundam Wing. That was like the big thing back in 1995 because Toonami got the rights to the franchise, and they were showing Gundam Wing. I think I forget the name of it. It's not Burning Gundam. That's the actual mobile suit. But there's one Gundam series where it's all about fighting. Each country in the Earth sphere has their own designated mechs. You got a mech from Mexico, you got a mech from New York, you got a mech from Japan, all fighting and corresponding one another to become like the Earth's champion. And I didn't like that. It wasn't for me. And I kind of blew past Gunpla until, like, again, when I went to college, and that was like in 2006 or 5. That's when I started studying game art and design.
Okay.
And I remember there was a point in time where we were on our midterms, we were taking a break, and I wanted to see what was on YouTube because everyone was posting all kinds of random stuff on YouTube back in the day, whether it was copyright or not. YouTube was like less strict at that time than they were now.
Yeah.
And I came across a gem of a show called 00 Gundam because, again, the stigmata of like, I don't want to watch the Gundam show. It's kind of like cheesy for kids. I don't like the double slitted mouth and the mouth part. It looks dumb. This mech designer, I forget who it was. It could have been the same designer that worked on another franchise with another producer called Hideo Kojima. And I don't think it's Shinji Yukawa. It could be someone else. But he said, I'm getting rid of the double slitted mouth. I'm going for more of a small, sharp, angular facial destruction design. I want the mechs to be slightly bulky, but have some like organic surfaces to them. I want them to move fast, but still have some weight and context with them. And I want to have each of these mobile suit pilots, which they're called maestros, to have a unique personality. Because the one thing I hate about Gundam Wing, I did not like the supporting cast. They were way too young for starters. That's like the premise with the mobile suit shows. It's usually a run-of-the-mills young man that's probably like 14 or 16 years old, gets a mobile suit. Somehow he's a skilled pilot, and he's going to do whatever he wants to protect his friends or his family from not getting killed. They took that premise and got rid of that and focused on something that was more grounded. Around that time, the U.S. was still in Iraq. So anything that corresponded with anything with Iranians or anything with U.S. military or militants or anyone that was like, I don't want to say that, but people that like to blow themselves up. I'll just say it that way. That was like the general theme for the first half of the very first episode, but there was a reason for that. It showed a kid named Setsuna FC, who was a child military soldier that was brought up in a war at a young age, and now he's a military militant. And then one day when things were getting worse, his friends were pushed to the corner. The military mobile suits were literally got him cornered. They couldn't go anywhere. All of a sudden above them, beams of energy start striking down on those military mobile suits and completely obliterates them. And all up in the air is another mobile suit that's floating up without any like thrusters. It's using some kind of mysterious energy, which they call GN energy in the universe. And at that moment, Setsuna was inspired. He wanted to become a pilot. And it wasn't until like I think at the age of 14 or 15, he became a Gundam Maestro, which means what I like about the show, he had time to train and perfect his abilities to become a pilot instead of naturally being given, the whole classic Mary Sue thing. So he has background, he has context, he has years of experience, and then you add on top of that years of experience piloting this newly advanced mobile suit that no one in the Federation has. It's new tech. No one's mobile suits can move that fast and agile as the ones have, because a lot of the Earth Federation forces mobile suits are very bulky. They're slow. They have a newer model that's pretty fast and agile, but not as fast as these 00 units. So I remember I was hooked on that, and I wanted to know everything about Gunpla. So there was a YouTube channel named Robert R's 2R's 2B. He doesn't make content anymore because he became a father. So a lot of his time and attention is on that. He will occasionally put a video every once in a while, but he was all about just snap together Gunpla kits, do a brief review, have a nice soft voice behind it when he's talking about his impressions on it, and then he would have a video every like 2 to 3 weeks. Something new in the Gunpla lineup, something that you probably never heard of, something that just recently came out, maybe something that's old that might pique your interest. That was like my epicenter right there of just wanting to really get involved with it. But as for the fundamental concept of, do I go for a clean build? Do I go for a weathered build? Who do I watch? Who do I follow? Unfortunately, at the time, there weren't a lot of like Western builders that really stepped up to the plate to really give that kind of like a motivational push. I know there were some, but they were kind of like, okay, this is what I build. This is what I use. It's done. No step by step, no progress, no hardships, no challenges. All the best channels out there at the time were people that were in Korea or people that were in Japan. No one here in the West. No one. It wasn't until like a handful of other channels started to really step up, and they're incredibly successful right now because their target audience is young. Mine's just like 50-50. It's between like 18 to 35 to maybe even 50. That was like the highest I saw in the analytics on YouTube.
Mhm.
So I know where my sweet spot is for my audience versus everyone else. It's all on the younger audience between like 10 and up, So
Right. So you've got
whatever the kids like, they'll gravitate towards whatever they build that's hot, right?
Yeah. So that was your entry into it then to start.
Yeah, because at a time I built starships as a kid.
Mhm.
I went to my local hobby shop. I built the X-Wing. I built the TIE Fighter. I built the Back to the Future DeLorean. I built the Ecto-1. I built a handful of the Jurassic Park model kits. I always wanted just to up the ante and really understand how to paint these kits. But my father knew basic painting, which kind of bummed me out, even though he was really good at the hobby. People in the hobby shop were kind of like discouraged towards little kids that want to learn how to paint. So that was kind of like depressing.
Right.
And the internet at the time wasn't as vast as it was now. It was infinite. It was a child. So you couldn't look at how-to videos except for reading articles or very, very poor resolution of Polaroid photos you would see from time to time. It was a hard time as a kid to really stay in that hobby. And then I eventually gave it up. After I made it into middle school, I was like, you know what? It was a good run. I played with model kits. I played with Legos. I'm good. I think I'll just focus on my one real passion, and that's art. I want to get into animation. I want to know how to do 3D animation. I want to know how to do character design. I want to do everything I could possibly can. Again, at the time, you couldn't know anyone that knew that unless you knew someone that worked in the industry, or you went to college. So yeah, but model kits came in way when I was in college. It came back at a time when, dude, I was depressed. I can get into that story later on, but it's a good story. Yeah, it was a dark time in my life. Why I got back into doing what I did for Gunpla, because I only build them. I snapped together at that time, and I was like, okay, I enjoyed the experience. I'm done. It was only till like I hit my lowest low in my life, where I had like literally my third midlife crisis, where I'm like, I need a distraction. I need something to take my mind off of what's going through my mind.
So you've built starships. So you've built Revels, you built AMTs, you built Polar Lights, you built whatnot, and then there's all the Gundam side, which I don't know the manufacturers. I'm assuming Bandai is one of them at least.
Yeah, you got Bandai, Kotobukiya, Sunrise. There's like 8 new ones that just came up, so I lost track of them.
Okay.
But they're good. They're good quality.
So it's two things. So it's kind of a twofold question. One, your feelings on, quite frankly, overseas quality versus North American quality, and your technique approach between the two.
Sure. Bandai is top tier. They will make a great product. They will not rush it. The only thing I will get on them is they have a bad habit of reissuing old kits that are like really popular. A good example is Unicorn Gundam Universe. They're always going back to that milk, dude. They're always going back to. They keep milking that franchise so hard because they got a big statue in Japan. They even got a fully mechanized one that moves.
Oh, I think I've seen that.
That's not a redesign, but I guess a re-envision of the RX-78-2 Gundam. So their quality is great. They're even making another facility to keep up with the demands of everyone buying these kits. Okay. And then you got Kotobukiya, phenomenal company. They've been around just as long as Bandai. Their kits are on a bit of the expensive side, depending on the supply and demand. Like a good example, anything that's made from the Metal Gear franchise, they'll usually do like a light run for like 2 or 3 years, and then they'll stop production on it. And that means the value goes up to where originally it would be like $80. It's now $250 to $350. Another good example in their lineup, the Armored Core series, which has now had a huge resurgence because the game franchise went on a massive hiatus for like 10 years plus. It was only until this year where they came up with Armored Core 6 Rubicon, which, by the way, phenomenal game. I'm going to be playing that today. Nice. And now the urge for people they want those mech designs. But here's the thing. They're already capitalizing very well on their old issues of the kits from the previous games. I don't think they'll feel confident to do anything new yet. The urge and the need has to be there because Armored Core is kind of like a one-off game, and then that's it. People move on to the next one.
Right.
You have another company, Sunrise Studios. Was it Sunrise? Sunrise Studio. They are a Korean-based company. They do like their own little hodgepodge of Gundam kits with their own designs, but the plastic quality is really bad. It's not durable. It's very brittle. So I don't use their products anymore. But one company I've actually had really good conversations with. I think they're called. Dang, let me take a look at it real quick. I can probably pull this up. I literally did a video on this years ago. The model kit that I'm referring to, it's called. Shut up, you. My video was playing in the background. Where are you? Damn it! I got too many videos. My apologies, audience.
You have a lot of videos, but that's good.
It's an itch. Where are you? It's based off of another 1980s, 1990s show called Tekkaman Blade, or here in the States they call it Techno Man. And it aired every Sunday at 10 o'clock in the morning, and everyone ate it up. Everyone ate it up. They loved it, and unfortunately, hit a cliffhanger at the very end, and no one didn't watch it. Okay, so another good company. They are called Eastern Models. They work on all the Iron Man model kits that just recently came out last year and this year. Great quality, tons of articulation, great posability range. They're also working on model kits for Mega Man. They finished up the Mega Man Zero series, which by the way are phenomenal kits. Let's see, where's another one? Oh my god, that text is so small, James. Why did you do that? Dang it! I'll come back to it another time. It's another company that has recently worked on their version of the Evangelion series, and the last time we had like a big Evangelion that's a 1/60th scale. This is what they call the perfect grade in the Bandai lineup. They came up with their version of the all three popular Evangelion Evangelion series: Evangelion 1, 2, and 3. That kit is phenomenal. It has some issues with its interior design for its inner skeleton. It's a little flimsy because they're doing their own architecture compared to the one that came out back in the early 90s.
Right.
And the last one, oh my goodness, I have too many playlists. I already talked about Eastern Models, but where is it? It has to be. Is it in my random video game list? Oh gosh. Oh, Playmax. Yeah, Playmax. Plamax. They worked on the Pacific Rim model kits. There was only
they made Pacific Rim model kits
based off of the first film. They worked on, I want to say 2, Gypsy Danger and the one Jaeger that was from Russia, like the older Jaeger. I don't think they worked on Strider. That was a bit of a unique design. They didn't do anything with that, and they didn't work on the other one that was based in China. Their kits are great, expensive. But the quality that's there, the fact that they utilize their own LED system to light up the reactor, that was such a fantastic kit. But since then, they haven't made anything else. They've been kind of dormanted, and it's kind of unfortunate. But ever since then, every company that is new has been coming out with their versions, their own unique designs that's based off of the Gundam universe. But it's not called Gundam. It's called something completely different. And that's fine. Competition is good because Bandai and Kotobukiya are the top ones in the upper echelon of model kits. They are the ones. And now you have other companies that are now stepped up to the plate with good plastic quality, good articulation, unique LED light systems, a really good, this is one thing I always touch on, a very well thought out and a very well engineered instruction manual. That is super key, and that's like the one thing I kind of nitpick with the Enterprise instruction manual. Because it's nothing complex. I get it, but when you look at the Enterprise model kit from Bandai, I forget which one it was. It was the one in the 3 series where they did the A, the E, the NX-01, and then they did Voyager. That instruction manual is beautiful. There's original conceptual art of the Enterprise, how it looked back in the 80s to what it looks now. There's concept art. There's notes from the actual designers that worked on it. There's notes from the designers that made the molding for these ships.
Oh, really?
It's great, and they talk about the structure, how they make these pieces already pre-painted, how they did the Aztecs, the fact that you don't need glue. Okay, so this is one thing I need to stress on, that Bandai is still like the top king in this. You don't need glue for these kits at all.
That's
no glue.
Incredible.
You can snap together. You're done. You don't like what you want, you can take them apart, interchange them with other model kits. Sky's the limit. Gundam in itself, it's all about expressing your creativity, your imagination.
Yeah.
What really inspires you out there in the echelon of content creators that do their own custom color scheme to their own designs. You don't get that now, like with Star Trek model kits. Everyone's kind of like in their own little box on what they do for content. I'll get on a rant on that another time, which is kind of the key reason why I make the content the way I make it. And versus the content that I've seen from other Star Trek builders that have made their content for 10 plus years. I don't see that with Gunpla anymore, especially thanks. I'm not humble bragging, okay, but I'm going to say that thanks to me and another fellow colleague builder. His name is It's a Gundam. I don't talk to him. We've only talked to each other once. That was like 5 years ago, but I respect his hustle. I respect his energy when he makes his videos. I like the way how he talks. I like the way how he connects with his audience. I like his style of how he paints his model kits. I like the fact that when he presents his stuff, is in front of his custom build diorama. He's an all-rounded nice guy from what I've seen. But again, I've only talked to him once. And when we did talk, he wanted to do a collaboration with me, but I had to turn him down because he was up here. I was still down here. I'm known as the dude that puts LEDs in Gunpla. But I wanted to somehow get to the same level where he's at by utilizing these LED lights to make it unique and different from all the other ones I've done in the past, because everyone that does Gunpla, they'll put LEDs in there, they won't explain the process, and they'll put the video up, and then you get that whole thread. How did you put them in? What kind of LEDs? Is it a 3mm bulb? Is it a chip? Is it a Pico? Is what's your power source? Are you using a USB? Is it a plug-in? Is it a lot of it has to stem with the fact there's a language barrier, and I get that. I 100% get that because I went through the whole rigors of that. But you got to start somewhere, and I honestly do believe that It's a Gundam and myself really started to push that forward with other people to get interested into the hobby, because there isn't a lot of Western influences out here. There isn't, So that's why it's best to identify yourself with a very catchy name, a personality, something that really says who you are, instead of, if anyone's watching this is nothing against you. If you have the name Studio behind your Instagram page and your channel, that's unoriginal. I'm sorry. And this is based off of another very popular YouTuber named G Studios. Phenomenal builder. Top-notch stuff. Met him once. Haven't talked to him since that one time, but he's a nice guy. Very talented man. But everyone gravitates towards the channel because of his custom style, how he paints and he builds.
Right.
And that's why everyone wants to put the studio part in their channel and their ID. If you're going to put studio behind your name, you got to think this long term, not just because of an impulse. When you have studio behind your name, you got to put out good quality work, and at the same time, you got to stay on top of that. Not because someone else has studio by their name. You got to have some kind of identity. I could easily put Otaku Builder Studios, too long. But if you put Otaku, that has like a connection with people that are into anime and sci-fi. And then you put the builder aspects, there's a concept of this individual that likes the fascination of building anything that is a model kit. So there's a nice correlation between the two names. Instead of just saying studio. You got the name studio behind that, you better step up your game. Because
I'm sure you've seen it in the sci-fi thing. It's works. Works is the thing for sci-fi. So works or model works, various different spellings is kind of the go-to. But you bring up something. You bring up something that actually allows me to segue into something we were talking about yesterday. So you are primarily, based on your channel and your Instagram and kind of everything you've kind of branded with yourself, primarily a Gundam Gunpla builder, but you also do other subjects from time to time.
Pretty much dead kits.
Yeah.
Yeah, long and forgotten kits that no one doesn't look at, and I love working on those.
Oh, nice.
They're fun.
So, and this is, without getting the details, there's been some other modelers who've complained that their audience doesn't watch their non-primary focus stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you feel about that? Given that, we kind of talked about your numbers, and, with the exception of a couple, which I do want to come back to, your Trek and Star Wars builds tend to be lower view counts than your
yes. Mm-hmm.
than your Gunpla. And now you don't make a living off this, but you do make some income from Patreon and AdSense and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes.
so, no need to get into specific numbers. That's not what it's about. It's more about the case of, okay, so you're known as one thing, but you sometimes want to do something else. But when you shift gears, it can affect your income potential.
Yeah.
And how do you feel with that versus okay, well, if you want people, the buyers, to pay for it, you got to make what they want versus being more independent and doing what you do and the audience follows you or they don't.
I always have the thought in my head that I am generally building these kits for the average consumer. People that never heard of them, never had an interest in them. I want to bring it to the forefront. And I always know that it's going to take a hit on viewership and revenue. So I make sure I get that out of the way, because a lot of people compare between numbers as like a good, healthy check to no check at all. For me, it's the polar opposite. If I don't see that interactivity and I don't see those high viewership numbers, that's where I know that I either failed on the way how I produced the video, or I failed with an audience that didn't really care for it. So when you work on Star Trek and Star Wars model kits, you have to produce those in a time when they're both big. So let's give an example. Mandalorian just wrapped up. Phenomenal season 1 and 2. What's the one thing that everyone's hot about? They want the Razor Crest. There's no Razor Crest in the market. There won't be one for another 3.5 years, because it's between the licensing between Bandai and Revel. Who's going to get the rights on doing what? Because no design's the same. Every Razor Crest is drastically different. So you got to work what's on your plate. So Revel had to wait until Bandai's licensing was up until they did theirs. And at that point, Steam's kind of the hype has died down for the Mandalorian. It's ramping down. People aren't watching the show anymore. They already know who Grogu is. They know the identity of the Mandalorians. They know that the Razor Crest is gone. What's the next hot kit that people want?
Mm-hmm.
They want that Naboo Starfighter.
Yeah,
that's been completely decked out.
The souped up.
Yeah, dude, that thing's beautiful. So when that comes out, you have to build it because general audience will want that.
Yeah.
So anything that is older in the Star Wars lineup, it won't have the same kind of kick and feel with the audience, unless it's the same audience you grew up with, or the audience that follow you from the very beginning. They'll like that content.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's where people don't. This is where people don't talk about it enough. Is you've got your casual viewers, kind of who catch. And kind of follow for the specific things that they like, but they also like you. Yeah. But they may not like Star Trek or Star Wars or whatnot. But you also have your hardcore base. Your base, they will follow you through everything you build, because it's not just about what you build; it's about you, the presenter.
Yes, presentation is key. That is one thing that has been grilled on me back when I was in college. If your presentation is off, or if your intro doesn't have a good click or a snap needs to it, if your preference for a soundtrack doesn't jive with your audience, they will fall off hard. That is the key reason why when I worked on the Enterprise model kit, I needed to focus on something that was Star Trek. No upbeat music, strictly orchestral scores. Why? Because that's what the films use. That's what the TV shows use. and a handful of other video games adaptations of Star Trek. So you have to hit a certain core with another part of an audience. Maybe you have some audio aficionados that like something with those musics. Maybe you like some people that like unique angles, the way how you present your work. You got to gradually evolve and improve your work over time. Like a good example, like I remember like kicking myself in the butt where I didn't want to record anything in 4K in 60 frames. And then when I did record in 4K and 60 frames, it looked really off to me. And plus, the general audience don't look at 4K videos anymore. So all you really need is just like a really good 1080p video, 30 frames per second. Perfect. Easy on the eyes. Easy to follow. Because, you know, quality and resolution changes depending on how long you're on YouTube. And that's really important. So that's why I ditched the 60 frame resolution and I went to 30 frames, but I still keep it at not 5K, but 4K resolution, 2160 or 2140, 1440 resolution. I keep it there because there's also, again, there's another context of another audience that like that high fidelity. So when it comes to Star Trek, that is a risk and reward when making content. I got lucky with the 1/1000 scale Enterprise from Star Trek Discovery because, once again, what did I say? It was the hot thing that was out now. Season 1 was it season 1? Season 2 wrapped up for Star Trek Discovery, and you saw the new redesign of the Enterprise.
Sorry, I apologize. Sorry, it shows up for like 10 seconds at the end of the last episode of season 1, and then it makes a couple appearances in season 2.
It gets you hooked. So now you got to know, when are they doing the prototypes? When is it going to be released? And how can you bring it to your audience that might have an interest in it? Do I need to buy the separate LED kits? Do I need to do my own custom rig? There's so many facets in there that you have to think for a general consumer to not be overloaded on, do I go with these lights? Do I go with this kind of color configuration? Why did he go with that color configuration instead of the metallic surface? You're going to always have those people that are going to like compare and contrast between the two. So I got lucky with that because I wanted to go with more of the Enterprise refit color scheme because it's easier on my eyes. I didn't like the metallic finish than I do now. I think it looks nice. But then, I did the USS Defiant. That's another hidden miss. That was a big miss, but it's done better over time. And then I kind of hit a wall where I'm like, you know what? I got the refit. I've had it in my backlog for like 3 to 4 plus years. It's collecting dust. I want to do something with it, but I don't have anything that really motivates me to want to build it. And then one wonderful afternoon, when my wife came up to me and was just talking to me, she's like, I think my period stopped. I was like, no, you're seeing things. No, my period stopped. Like, really? No. Now we're going to Planet Parenthood. We're going to go check it out. And then when it was confirmed and we were going to expect it to be parents, it was kind of like, okay, what can I do that can connect to my child and me? What can something that my child can see 10 to 20 years later that can really get them excited and understand what their father was passionate about? I want them to know that I love Star Trek. I want them to know that my first crush was literally the refit. There's something about its elegance, its design, how the warp nacelles, the warp pylons are designed, that beautiful ore of the deflector dish, because I didn't like the satellite dish from the original TV series. There's something that's hypnotic, but at the same time pleasant about it. And I want my kid to understand that I'm not just going to build it for the sake of just get revenue from it. I'm going to build it because this is something that I've always wanted to do at a ripe young age of 7 years old. And now that I actually have the skill set to do it now, I want to perfect it. So I busted my ass for like 2 months looking up every reference I can possibly find on the internet, every resolution of the movie I can find to try to get to the same kind of fidelity. And thankfully, Paramount released the director's cut of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and that was like a buffet for my eyes. I'm like, oh, this is what I need. This is my drive. This is my punch. I must have let that movie play in the garage like 20 times. Just let it do its thing to keep me motivated. But the one thing I told myself when I worked on that refit, I didn't want to rush it. Rushes lead to issues, whether it's quality or at the same time, the way how the video is presented. So I knew that working a full-time gig at Amazon, it would suffer from making video for like 2 to 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
I said, you know what? The risk and reward is going to be paid off for myself and for my future child. If the audience is willing to enjoy it and understand why I like what I like, that means I've done my job. You know, but they just have to be patient until I can get it done in time. And I was stressed, you know, start a new job that's like very physical and demanding, both mentally and physically, and then tending to my wife's needs, you know, being pregnant. And then at the same time gained this strong dopamine of excitement of becoming a father at a late age, you know, because I never imagined I would be a father. You know, I like I said in my video, I never would imagine it, but I gave hints that I was going to become a father. I told myself, if I'm going to do this refit, I need to do it the way how the production team did it back in the day. No water slide decals for the Aztecs. We're going balls to the walls. We're going to do it their way.
Yeah, so, I got to look at I do not know how you did that so fast. Like, it's not something I ever want to touch. I appreciate it, but I see other people do it. Takes them months, and it did not take you months to do a 4-color paint scheme, not including the base code.
Oh, dude, I was passionate. I even talked to. I hope you get a chance to talk to this gentleman. His name is Admiral Buck.
Bill Cross. I've already talked to him. We just haven't scheduled it yet.
Oh, dude, like I went straight to him to ask him very specific questions, like what is the correct color scheme for the Enterprise? It can't be like a bright white. And he's like, it is, but it isn't. It's like, it's white, but it's like a very soft gray. I was like, no. And he's like,
you know what it is? Because it was Paramount Primer.
Yes.
That's what it was. Just Paramount had these buckets, like these, like, not buckets, but like, Jesus Christ, barrels of white primer, Paramount Primer.
So magical, dude. It's just kind of like, oh, I get it now. And I remember just asking him, like, what do I use for the fluorescent like texture? Because I don't want that. You know, there's fluorescent paint out there that is a little too, what's the word? It's not refractive, but obviously if you look at it from a distance, not too bad. When you look up close, it looks too sparkly. That's the question. That's it. It's too sparkly. And he said, oh, you just need to use like these fishing lure paints. Just make sure you wear a mask because the stuff's really bad for your lungs. Right. And then you're good. And I was like, no, it doesn't work. And then when I put the first coat of the gold, I'm like, oh my God, he's right. I got to do the red. Oh my God, I got to put the blue. Oh, it's coming together. And then I left it alone one day. And then I find out that my mixing was wrong. And I had to redo the top saucer section all over again. But it was okay. It was okay. It was okay because I was like, okay, how can I fix this? I'll lightly sand it off. I'll reapply another coat on there. Not too much of thinner in it, but just enough paint. Should be good. Okay, it's good. Okay, now I got another problem. The Aztecs are a little too bright. I got to slightly desaturate it with the base coat paint. Not too much, not too heavy. Just enough where it can contrast nice with the bottom half of the saucer section and the top. And got it. So tons of trial and error. These are things that I would love to see from other content creators because it keeps your audience invested. They understand your struggles. They understand your pain.
Okay, so that's the thing. I am very open about my mistakes and errors and things that hold me back because other people aren't doing that. They cut it in such a way that everything went perfectly and it was great and whatnot. I'm like, bullshit. No, because you need to show that even experienced modelers run into problems. And if you just take a breath, there's very few things you can't fix. Because if you don't do that, you are fundamentally gatekeeping new people who want to come into it, who are like,
that's right.
No one else have. Am I the only one who has these issues?
No, so you want to have a sense that you're a human being. You're going to make flaws. You're going to make mistakes. You're not perfect.
Yeah.
And that's like my biggest complaint that I don't like from these other. Again, nothing against. This is not a rant against the other track builders that do the same content what we do. It's just that you have to find that fundamental connection with your audience and let them know that you're a human being. You're going to make mistakes, and with those mistakes, you'll get better. Denzel Washington said the best quote, and it has stuck with me for the longest time. He says, "If you're not failing, you're not learning."
Yeah.
Fantastic saying. And I had the exact same struggles with the refit. You know, I like literally when that kit was done, I literally was super paranoid with the electrical internals. I did not glue the deflector dish in place until like month 8.
Yeah.
I was like, something's gonna fail.
Show you the access.
Yeah, it's like something's gonna fail. I know it. And I was like, nope, it's good. I'm done. The project's done.
I'm working on a reel about these.
I have
3 times to get it right, and it almost wrecked me. I was actually ready to be quiet. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm paying you back. So I'm like, if I can't mask 5 lines, what am I even doing? But the problem is the parts made in, the parts made in such a way, it's so hard to see the delineation between the edges in the trench because it's only a 1/16 of an inch.
Yes. Yeah, I remember just trying to mask just like the inner parts of the grill. It was, but you had to make sure that you didn't use the wrong kind of paint, otherwise it would just bleed into those areas.
Too. So I did 3 coats of Stynel Res black primer, and kind of looked at the other side like, oh, looks like we're looking good, and then 2 coats. I still have a couple bottles of Testors flat black. A Model Master. So that's 2 coats of that on here, and then clear blue on the inside. And it healed up, no chipping, no bleed, nothing. There's still a little bit of imperfection, but once you light it, it's not enough to. But that's the point, is that
you gotta show the struggle.
Take a break, walk away for as long as you need to.
Yes.
Because I was able to come, the technique I used to make this work is I actually use a cuticle stick.
My man.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
And if it felt like it was starting to walk, I would press down the last place it was good, squeeze the end, and pull it as tight as I could and lay it back down.
Yeah.
And that yielded the best result.
Yeah, dude, I had the exact same problem with the nacelles. I ended up having to buy a second Enterprise because
I bought 2 to start with just in case.
Yeah, you have to, right? Because I'm going to say this, compared to all the model kits out there, the refit is fundamentally the one kit that will define you as a builder. I don't know why. Maybe it's because of the size. Maybe because it's the design. Maybe because it requires 4 to 5 months to construct.
Because well, the other thing too, it is a great kit, but it is a terrible, terrible kit at the same time.
Yes, the pylon problems is the biggest concern. Jesus Christ, that gap.
Oh yeah,
hate it.
Standing things down or moving pins and whatnot. I kind of found a simplified way to do it.
I saw it and it broke my heart. I wish I saw yours first before I did mine, because that gap is still on mine and it haunts me. Yeah, I couldn't hide it. I couldn't fill it in with any putty resin. It's still stuck there. And what you did, I'm like, why didn't I think of that? That's genius. Just shave off some of the plastic, dude.
But I mean, to be fair though, I've been building that model since 2005 when it came out, when it was only $60 with decals.
Good times.
So I had a lot of familiarity with the problem areas, but I've only ever actually completed one, and that was way back in 20. Like one of my earliest build videos from like 2013. And I actually gave that to a friend of mine. I worked friendish, someone I worked with who loved it. Star Trek. I'm like, here, you're gonna get more joy out of this than I will. And apparently, most of the lights still work after 10 years.
Wonderful. Wow. If that works, that means, dude, give yourself a pat on the. I'll do it for you.
There you go.
I'll
But
give
no,
you a pat on the back.
you were right. To finish a 350 refit is an accomplishment in itself. No matter what
Yes.
anyone says, that is a huge accomplishment. To do the interference paint scheme, to do the lighting, to do everything you did, that steps it up. So that goes from accomplishment to huge accomplishment.
Yes, and I will compare it to another kit that had the exact same challenges, but I still hold the refit as like one of my best kits I've ever done.
Mhm.
The Millennium Falcon, the perfect grade Millennium Falcon, great kit. Had a lot of fun.
Mhm.
I made some mistakes. I made some mistakes when it came to painting that kit many years ago. The biggest mistake was not putting a primer on it when I painted. I just painted as is and then did appreciate it on it. Again, I was new to the game. I had to learn how to do this stuff.
That's what it's all about, though. Oh, you did the Franklin too. Yeah, we talked about that. I'm just kind of scrolling through your. Oh, yeah,
I don't like that.
Perfect grade Falcon. See, I actually have the fine molds Falcon.
If you get the perfect grade Bandai, it will break you.
So yeah, I get it. I know all about it. I know exactly what you're talking about. But yeah, so I mean, we kind of get a little sidetracked there. But what I wanted to say when we were kind of talking about, do you stick with Gundams or no? And that's part of the reason I kind of branded myself as just a model shop, and I specific focus science fiction models with a secondary focus on entertainment, TV, tabletop gaming, so that it gives me a fairly broad coverage that it's just wiggle room, it's just breathing room to do what I want.
Yes and no, because you have to cater towards two different audience now. My audience base for Starship is very small. My audience for Gunpla is massive. They've been with me since day one. Yeah. So,
but in itself, sci-fi modeling is a small corner relative to almost everything else.
Yes, yeah. But at the same time, I like to challenge myself.
Mm-hmm. As you should.
I have built almost every perfect grade. Perfect grades are the most expensive kits in the Gundam lineup. They're the ones that have articulated hands, very complex inner frame, somewhat LED light systems. I've built all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I want the next best thing. The best thing came out 4 years ago, which was the RX-78-2 Unleash. Phenomenal perfect grade. There hasn't been anything else that came out ever since then. So now I look after other third-party kits that aren't Gundam related, but might be something that connect with me as a child. Evangelion's one of them. Tekken Man Blade's one of them. Okay, what else can I do? Should I go back to building Star Trek, which is the most hardest, form of making content on YouTube? Well, if you do that, Otaku, you're going to have your base audience not watch it. But who knows? You might pick up some new people in behind it. I'm okay with that. Again, I want to challenge myself. I want to rewatch the old TV shows and the films. I want to connect with another broader audience, because Star Trek is what I grew up with before Gunpla. Okay?
Yeah.
And it'll always be there, just as Gunpla is with me currently right now. But that finite energy and that determination of wanting to one-up every project that I work on, it has been grilled on me since like a kid. Like when I do my kit bashes, I take what I learned from my previous one and try to improve the next one. And then when I improve on the next one, what can I do that I didn't do for my first one to improve something like, say, a higher voltage or less LEDs, more articulation, a different paint scheme? Instead of working with water-based paint, should I work with lacquer-based paint, which is I did for a long time. I stick with water-based paint because it's safe for newer and experienced audience. And then when you work away with lacquer, it has more higher durability. It lasts longer. There's less chipping. So I'm always looking ways to improve my technique. The one thing I do stray from, I don't like building anything too small, because I work in the factory a lot, and I'm starting to get like early stages of carpal tunnel.
Oh, yeah.
And like right now I'm good because I'm on day 3 from healing, but I'm back in the factory tomorrow. These hands are going to hurt. So if there was a way I can go back to doing Gundam content full time again, I would do it in a heartbeat. But my responsibilities have changed. My way how I do things have changed. And the wonderful thing, I'm very, very blessed and humble. My audience understands that because there's a target audience that they're in our age group that understands what it means to being a full-time dad or working a full-time gig while doing YouTube part-time or just as a side hobby. I'm hoping at a time where if I do keep making the content that I do make now, it'll eventually ramp up into something big. That is my hope. But right now, my priorities are still the same.
Well, that's the thing. So I know. So because I don't watch. Look, I'm guilty of it. I tend to watch your content that I like. I'm not so much into Gundams and Gunpla, so I don't really watch them. I did watch the YOLO Park Optimus Prime.
Oh, love that kit. Go on.
So I don't know if you've kind of made a publicish statement like, "Hey guys, appreciate everything, but the content's going to slow down because of life and parenthood and whatnot." Although I still maintain that your output level is high for your level of hours worked and at-home responsibilities.
Thank you.
But and then, like I said, I did subscribe to your Patreon, which everyone he has a Patreon.
Yeah, just
go check
buck.
it out. Multiple levels. I think I can't remember.
It doesn't. Like I said,
I don't know if I'm. Oh, I'm master grade. There we go. Yeah, $5 a month. Or $5 Canadian, so that's like 50 cents American.
Every little bit helps, right?
Yeah, so it's there's a lot of stuff on here. And so you do your live streams. You don't do you do them on the regular, or do you kind of just like it's, hey guys, I'm going to be available on these days? Or
I took a break from live streaming after our son was born, and I'm now getting back to doing it right now. But here's the thing: my audience on Twitch is really small. Average people that'll be there like 5 people.
Right.
Whereas on YouTube, it's been like a solid 20 to 50 people. Okay. So what people are asking me to do is do live streams while I build, and I have to always turn them down.
I did that with the Kelvin. Never again. She got to plan ahead exactly everything you're doing. Yeah. And it's so difficult.
Yeah.
Look, there are people who can do it. Absolutely. I don't have the organizational structure in my brain to do it.
Well, for me, I like just being in my quiet place, building my kits, listening to my music, or listen to a podcast, like listen to your podcast as I'm working on my kit bash. I like to just chillax and be in my zen. I don't need like 50 to 100 people looking over my shoulders and then critiquing and then criticizing my way of how I do my process. I don't need that. I get that would work. Okay.
Yeah, enough of that.
And then when I do, if that ever does happen, I don't want to do a stream where I'm doing it in a sense of like, hey, this is what I did. Give me some donations. Exactly. I need that. First and foremost, the streams are just there for me to chill and hang out with the audience. That's what I have been doing for the last 3 weeks, making videos, but streaming on YouTube. I do keep the videos private because there is some copyright stuff that are on there. So, I just make sure.
So patron only feature then, essentially.
Yeah, I'll eventually be moving them over to Patreon. But the one thing that I've been lacking a lot is just not being able to connect more with the community. And I feel that streaming on YouTube, just for right now, gives me that opportunity. And it's just wonderful to answer questions from the audience, whether it's, do you have any videos on tutorials that put LEDs? Why was the Enterprise harder compared to the Defiant? How come you don't do, this is like the biggest complaint, and I 100% agree with it, why don't you do a better job with your seam lines? General criticism, general compliments. I'm actually okay with it now, and I don't know why. There was a part of me that was like really afraid of that, but now it's like, no, dude, I'm an open book. Ask me questions. I'm a human being. I have flaws.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I haven't done it yet, but live stream is part of my Patreon. My hope, though, is what I would like to do is have, just like the podcast, have guests on to answer questions in that. So instead of just me answering model making questions, I don't know everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, hey, join us on the live stream. Tonight me and HJ Model Works are on, or me and Otaku Builder are on, and just join us, and we're gonna chat about. Well, in the case of you and I, if you ever join me for a live stream, all the shit we grew up with.
Yeah, people eat that up.
Yeah, exactly. And then
They do.
just open, essentially just open the floor to be like, hey, ask us questions. James, I do appreciate you coming on the show. I'm like I didn't know what to expect. I mean, like, so we've chatted intermittently on Instagram, DMs. But then talking to you yesterday for like an hour where we just kind of did a tech test, and I actually regret not recording the whole thing now, because I'm like, there would have been a lot of good stuff to pull out of that.
That's okay. That gives you reference to do for your next future podcast.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, just to just hang out and chat for an hour. Say, okay, sweet. We got. But yeah, so I'm hoping that if this is a good experience for you, you'll come back again. We can discuss whatever as things come up. Or like I said, if there's something you're like, hey, you know what, I'd really like to talk about this. Can I get some time to?
I would like that. Yeah. I would like that.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm no genius. I've only got so many ideas. But so tell us, because we kind of talked about it, but I'm gonna put all the links to where everyone can reach you. But
yes,
where can people find you, and how can they support you?
Yeah, you guys can find me on Instagram at Otaku Builder and X. Hate that name. Let's just call it X Twitter. You can find me on Twitter there. Twitter is essentially my backup in case things went bad on Instagram. Mm-hmm. I don't have a TikTok, but I am on Threads for as long as that lasts. I also have a Patreon page. You can look up it as Otaku as well. Not many things are happening on Patreon, but every little bit helps. If you just can support like $1, that helps out every future build for the channel. And I think that's pretty much it. And if you want to come join me on live stream, I live stream on YouTube, /Otaku Builder, and on Twitch.
So, but there is the YouTube channel with lots of long form content going back. It looks like 6 years.
Oh, I think it's like 5 now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of good stuff. Thank you so much for your time. I enjoyed talking to you. I really hope we can do this some more frequently.